Tonight, we tell you about a couple of great events coming to Baton Rouge. I'll introduce you to someone who has turned his past into great purpose. We honor the fallen, and we talk about mental health. Roll it, Scott. It is a subject for years across this country people just did not want to talk about. The status of our mental health. Going all the way back to 1949, in America, we have designated this time as Mental Health Awareness Month, and I am so pleased to be talking tonight with Dr. Brian Benson, who is our guest for segment number 1 to talk about Mental Health Awareness Month. We were talking before we started the show that you were here about 3 weeks ago, and I said, I'll have you back. You didn't think it was going to happen this fast, right?
And I thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, let's get into it, man. I said it in the open. For a long time, it was a thing people didn't talk about. If you were having mental health issues, you suppressed it. You hid it at the bottom of a bottle or at the end of a joint or some other stuff. But now people seem to be more comfortable talking about having issues or not being okay. What created that?
Yeah, working with the stigma has been challenging because still to date, only about half of people pursue seeking medical care for symptoms pertaining to a mental health issue. But we are trying to get out there and have the conversation about having any kind of symptoms related to depression or anxiety or any personality issues or anything else for that matter. It doesn't reflect on a weakness or a flaw of our own, but it's just a state of the human condition.
What is the most dangerous thing a person can do if they suspect they're having some issues or if they just don't feel okay?
Well, that's an interesting question because having a mental health illness, particularly depression, clouds our judgment and absolves our logic. And so when someone's contemplating suicide, it seems like a viable option. It seems like the only thing left to do in that state of mind, but they're not thinking clearly. So the most dangerous thing would be not reaching out to somebody, reaching out for help.
The importance of having a support group around you cannot be understated. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, just before this segment, we were talking about that a little bit. We used to interact with our friends, family, neighbors more often. Now we're so busy. We're lucky to get a text in. And then we're actually hiring somebody to talk to. We're paying them for therapy, talk therapy of some sort. So that's one thing we can do is be sure to engage that social network, our friends, family, whoever it is that we pick up a phone and call on our worst day. We've got to stay connected with those folks. We've got to reach out to others who might be hurting. We've got to stay connected. We're social beings.
I really believe in being intentional about who I'm around in non-business settings. I mean, work is work, but I think that real estate in a day is, I have to be so intentional about being careful, either knowing what I'm going to deal with when I'm going into it or avoiding it all together, because otherwise, man, you'll find yourself off equilibrium, right? Talk about that.
Well, I'd call that mental hygiene.
Mental hygiene.
You've basically summed up, there are certain parts of our lives that are essential to us living that balance, right? And that might be, for some folks, it's spirituality, right? They're getting into church on a regular basis. They've got names and numbers of folks in their congregation. For others, it might be exercise. Exercise releases those endorphins. Those are the ones that mask pain and make you pick your mood up. And then others, it could be getting out in nature or something like that, being with a loved one. So those things are critical, and some of us lack, for example, with the disease of depression, some of us lack good mental balance and coping skills. So we might be doing okay until something happens, and then all of a sudden.
I also believe in keeping a steady diet of not being on social media.
Oh, boy.
It seems to, I always call it a cesspool of misinformation anyway, but it is affecting, especially children, it's affecting their view of self and their view of the world. So how would you advise a reasonable engagement with social media?
Yeah, it's becoming a disease of its own.
Yeah.
Gaming, video games is also on the list now of mental health illnesses. So it has to be done in moderation. I can real simply say, as a physician, I don't have a Facebook account, which is the honest to goodness truth. Because you know what, patients could contact, it could get really complicated, right? But others have, for part of their job, they have to be plugged in, but it has to be done in moderation. You have to have time to shut the phone off, put it away, and then, you know, my wife calls Facebook fake book, because people sort of show their best. You know, it's unrealistic, some of what you see there, and then we're comparing ourselves, and I think it's potentially harmful. It's nice to connect with folks, but the right
I could
way.
do a whole segment just about that fake book, huh? Tell her I'm gonna borrow that for her just for a little while.
Will
all right?
do.
If people want to get more information, if they're looking for assistance, who can they call?
Well, obviously, reach out to your primary care doctor. Those are the doctors that provide the most mental health services, psychiatric services by a physician, or counselors, psychologists, and licensed clinical social workers will help. My name is Dr. Brian Benson. My clinic is Salubre Care, and if you look us up online at salubrecare.com, we'd be glad to see how we can help out.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate you coming in, man.
Glad to be here.
Coming up next, we'll talk about National Police Week. It's taking place next week across the country, but specifically in Washington, D.C. Gino is in the house next. And that was great. So, you know, this will probably be the last time he comes on the show, and I'll address him as Sergeant McNeely. The next time he'll be here, he'll be Lieutenant McNeely, promoted earlier this week, and it's going to be taking place, what, next week or week after?
Yeah, it'll be official May 20th,
All right,
so we'll start that process then.
All right, man. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, look, you're here this week to talk about National Police Week that takes place next week. It starts Sunday through Saturday. Started way back in 1962 by President Kennedy, and law enforcement agencies from around the country go to Washington, D.C., and there is a huge ceremony and a series of activities that take place here. The city does something here for the fallen as well. But for someone who is unaware about Police Week, talk a little bit about what that is.
Well, it's a national event that we have, and we celebrate it here, like you said, in Baton Rouge, and we remember our fallen officers, deputies, all law enforcement, their sacrifice that they made to the community and for society. You know, it's a trying action that's on the officer and their families.
Right.
So we honor not only the fallen officer, but we honor the families for their sacrifice. You know, it takes a toll on us all, and so it's more of an appreciation and a remembrance of the actions that they had taken in that moment to give their life for their fellow mankind, brother, and for society.
You know, as I referenced, it goes all the way back to 1962. Is it different now, though, in the era of what we just talked about with Dr. Benson, social media and all the criticism of law enforcement? Does this week take on a different significance now?
I would say both, yes and no.
Okay.
As far as the ceremonial process that we have, and celebrating the life of the officers and their sacrifice along with the families, you know, that's the same, because it's a trying time in remembrance, right? But when you're putting that message out and reminding the community of the sacrifice that all law enforcement make to make sure you're safe. You know, there's an element of people out there who don't believe in service, right? And they feel that they can do anything at any time without having the structure of society. You know, Chief LaDuff, many years ago, would say that law enforcement officers, we're the buffer. We stand in the middle between chaos and calm. And if you don't have that buffer, you know, it's gonna be chaos. Right. So overall, it's a remembrance of the sacrifice, and then again, it's the thought that we need law enforcement in that place to make sure that everybody's safe. At the end of the day, people want to be safe.
People want to be safe. What about the work that's being done now? I know the police department has been out a lot engaging with the community, trying to build that bridge back between law enforcement and their community. Tell me how that's going.
Well, we've been pushing hard. I think it's been going great. The idea of working as a unit with us in the community is the only way that we can affect change. You know, our effort is to make sure that the community is informed. And if you're informed and you have that information is power, and we're working with the community to make sure that they're informed and letting them know that the people who want to do the right thing, we're on your side. And the people who want to do the bad things out there, we're gonna put you in jail. So we want you to have that bit of information to know the difference.
Right.
You know, we do target enforcement. It's not a blanket approach. Right. We go after those bad actors.
You know, the department right now up at the website has a dashboard, a crime dashboard, that people could see the trends of what's happening in the community. In about 30 seconds, tell me about that.
Well, it's important that people know what we're doing, right, and what the numbers are. There's a false narrative out there of crime being out of control. So you can actually go to there and look at the real numbers of what happened, what's going on in the city. You know, we don't make those numbers up. It's what's there. It's a fact. You can pull it. We can prove it. We can show you where we at, where we were, and the progress that we're making to make sure Baton Rouge is better.
Well, there's a 43% reduction in violent crime and homicides as we speak
Right
now.
Right.
So hopefully this will be a better year for Baton Rouge and all of the citizens here. And I got, 30 seconds, man, Lieutenant. Hey,
Thank you.
Hey, coming up, there's a couple of great events taking place in Baton Rouge. One that's going to go on for a series of weeks, and the other taking place next weekend. We'll tell you about them both in the next segment. And then the last segment of the show features a conversation with a gentleman who has taken some things from his past and turned it into purpose. We had a great conversation. I cannot wait to introduce you to him, and we'll do all of that coming up next. It's Mother's Day weekend, y'all. Hopefully you spent some money. Back in a moment. All right, so I told you going into break about a couple different things coming to Baton Rouge. One is an event taking place next Saturday. This weekend kicks off a series of events taking place in Scotlandville, and we will start with Morgan Uda.
Great job.
Y'all don't even understand how much I wanted to get that name right coming in there, and we got it right. This Saturday, the Baton Rouge African American History Museum is having something, 6 p.m. Let's talk about what the event is.
Legacies to Afrofutures is an art and benefit concert where we will be raising matching funds for the museum's capital campaign, helping to launch that with Jason Roberts and Angela Machin, the son and daughter of the late Sadie Roberts Joseph, who we all miss
One of my
very
favorite
dearly.
people. Yep.
Absolutely beautiful elder. We are assisting them with moving into the new location at 805 St. Louis Street.
Tell them again, where's the new location?
805 St. Louis Street is a new location, absolutely beautiful building, historic building that we are renovating alongside with them. We are just helping out with the beautification efforts, redoing 3 of the artifact rooms and redoing the facade so that everyone knows what that new building is.
So it's so interesting. It was August of 2019 when we buried Miss Sadie Roberts Joseph. And I remember there were weeks of remembering her, and then COVID happened. And so the next year there was really no movement to gather and celebrate her again because we weren't gathering in fall of 2020. I think it's important to support what she stood for out there because
Absolutely.
she's a pillar of Baton Rouge.
Yes.
And she was, and her memory still is. If people want to find out more about it, I'm going to come back to you, but if people want to find out more about it, where should they go?
They should go to thewallsproject.org. And on our main site, we have all the information about the benefit, which again is on May 20th from 6 to 10 at Chelsea's Live. We're going to have great art, great music. DJ Moose Harris, Lady V, Jazz Bandito is hosting. We're going to have Joe Scott, our local artist there. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to see Afrofuturistic art. It's going to be amazing.
Sounds like something to do on a Saturday. And Byron, you're kicking off this series in Scotlandville. It's a 6-week series?
10-week.
10-week series starting this weekend, this Saturday. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we're partnering with the Levitt Foundation for Levitt AMP Baton Rouge. And what it is a 10-week series over the next 3 years to bring outdoor music into Baton Rouge. And they chose us, Scotland Saturdays, to bring it right in the heart of Scotlandville.
So for me, I love this so much because of where it is and because of what it is and because of what it has the potential to draw people from the community out together, but draw people who are not in the community to enjoy it. So if you come out on Saturday to enjoy this, in addition to it being hot, what else are you going to enjoy when you're out there?
Well, you're going to enjoy a lot of vendors because that's one of the things we've been known for Scotland Saturdays, just having a lot of vendors, a lot of local entrepreneurs. We're going to have music, of course. We're going to have food. I mean, in South Louisiana, it's summer, springtime. We don't really need a reason to be outside. As long as you say food and music,
right.
We're there. We did our best to keep it in the cool of the day, so 5 to 9 is right there. So, we don't have to worry about at least that noontime sun-bearing heat on you. You get some of that evening time cool.
Talk about Scotland Saturdays.
Yeah, so Scotland Saturdays, we started in 2018. It was really a vision, a way of getting local businesses a chance to participate in the local pop-up markets. We just didn't have a lot of that going on a consistent basis in North Baton Rouge. And so we decided, hey, let's do it in Scotlandville. Let's do it at heart of Scotlandville, Scotland Ave, Scenic Highway, in the shadows of Sir University. And really just people kind of bought in, and it's grown more than just an open market. It's a social hub. People come and do things with their kids. We have activities that we do depending on the holiday, Christmas, Halloween, Easter, stuff like that. But it's really just a way for music, fun, socializing, being engaging in civic pride with the community.
What do you think the public's biggest takeaway is when you see them mingling and interacting there? What's the biggest takeaway?
The biggest takeaway is that social engagement piece. When people talk about community revitalization, we always talk about buildings and streets, which are important, but really that community, that people movement, that people power is the most important aspect. You want to have people to know their neighbors, know their community, and as you stated, people from outside the community coming and getting to know more about Baton Rouge as a whole, and not necessarily being segmented and being fluid within the city.
I was in a presentation this week, and the guy who talked about, he was somewhat of a demographer, but he was here to talk about crime and what happens, and he talked about the lack of investment in certain parts of the parish. And everywhere where there was crime and there was a lack of investment, it was in the North Baton Rouge area. And it's like, I'm telling people, you have to invest.
Yep.
It's not a cop issue, not a police issue. It's an investment issue.
Yep.
And if you're going to complain, get off your you-know-what and go do something about it. All right, I got less than a minute. Quickly, where can they learn more about your event?
You can go to Facebook or Instagram, Scotland Saturdays. You can email us at scotlandsaturdays@gmail.com. That's the best way to get in contact with us. Or go to our website, ssaturdays.com, and then you can find all information about us.
Morgan, where can they get information?
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of it, all under the Walls Project.
I would have loved to have seen Miss Sadie Roberts Joseph on TikTok.
I think she would find it very entertaining.
You know,
honestly.
I would love those phone calls that would start with Mr. Young.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about a great story and someone I can't wait to introduce you to. We'll do that next. Before we get into our final segment, Dr. Benson sent word back that he wanted me to share something with you. If you're having a mental health crisis or if something is going on, there is a mental health hotline. It's 988-988. And for anyone out there dealing with something, it is not a sign of weakness, but you should take advantage of the resources available for you. Again, that mental health hotline is 988. Now, getting into our final segment of this week's show, I want to introduce you to someone that I had the pleasure of speaking with a few weeks ago. And I rarely meet people who are not held down or held captive by their past, which is an interesting phrase. And Mike Banford is here with us now. And Mike, why don't you tell people your story? We met recently with a mutual friend of ours, and tell them about where you were recently so we can get into all the fantastic things you're doing right now.
Well, recently, I was just released from prison after doing 29 years, 3 months and 17 days for second-degree murder. I was released from the Department of Corrections, and everything that I learned during my time of incarceration, I just decided to put it back out into the community for at-risk youths, homeless people, for men, women, different type of program, because they really do need it in our society today, especially the kids.
It's so interesting. We talked for a couple of hours, maybe 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and you talked about all the work you did on yourself when you were on the inside. And then now that you've gotten out, you're trying to relay that information to the community about impacting these kids. So let's start there. You talked a lot about what people are trying to do that isn't working and why isn't it working. So let's talk about that a little bit, why people are having trouble reaching these kids.
Well, it's understanding them. And the one thing that we all have in common is that we've been misunderstood. We know what it feels like to be in pain, to feel shame, sadness, disappointment, and not loved. And as you and I spoke, the last time we spoke, we talked about the African proverb that said, if a child doesn't feel the warmth of a village, he'll burn it down. And as a result of that, this is why we're seeing many of the things that transpire in society. We have to begin to love these kids in ways that they never even thought that they could be loved. And it doesn't matter who it's coming from, but they need to feel that it's a natural thing that we as human beings have to feel love, to feel appreciated. And I think that's one of the things that motivates us to do those things that we should be doing in society.
They are so filled with anger, and so many of them, people say you can't reach. But I had this conversation with someone yesterday who just talked about being patient to get once, and this particular kid he was talking about realized that the person actually did have value in him. The walls began to come down, and then he got to know each other. They got to know each other. How do you advise interacting with some of these young men, especially those who are just on the other side of the line?
Well, love compels a person to change. And you have to understand where they're coming from. Why did they chose the direction of the path that they've chosen? Because you was once that individual too. Even if you didn't touch a life of crime, you did something you had no business doing.
Right.
And a lot of times we look down on them instead of lifting them up and letting them know, I care. These are the tools that you would need to survive in this life. We speak to them in ways that take away from them, and we don't speak to add to their life. Because you're dumb, you're stupid, you'll never be nothing. And those words have a tendency to sink in that individual, and they'll begin to live that out.
Yeah, what are some of the biggest goals you have now? Because I know that you are really intentional about engaging these kids and the community as a whole. What are your goals now?
My biggest goal right now is to actually help these kids. When you turn on the TV and you see juveniles, 15, 16, 14, have committed a murder, armed robbery, been arrested, that's disheartening. So my goal is to sit down and ask them kids questions. And the thing about us, we have to ask them questions, how you feel, what you think. These are questions that will give you an opportunity to build a bridge, because we done built the wall for so long. That lets them know that you care. And some of them may want to talk at the time, and then some of them may not want to, but you still have to try your best to build a bridge. You have to lead with love, grace, truth, joy, and motivation and encouragement.
You know, you told me quickly here, I got about 30 seconds, that you are trying to establish a curriculum that you want to be able to get into places to impact kids. Just quickly tell me what that is.
It's the village. It's to give them a place to go to talk, to relieve everything that they're going through. Because if she's working 2 jobs, or she's working 1 job, or she's not functioning in the right state of mind, where could it go? 85% of the household in the state of Louisiana are fathers the last time I checked. So now what happens then? Who leads the child? Who gives them what they need?
I'm going to get you back. I've got something special in mind for you that I want you to help me with. Mike, I appreciate you coming in here. And listen, y'all, it's Mother's Day weekend. To all the women, the moms in my life, happy Mother's Day to you. To all of the women connected to all this, happy Mother's Day. And I just got one thing to say. Father's Day is next month. Y'all have a great weekend.